Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 3. Now let's start the fanfic. Hinata couldn't help but feel that her cousin was truly talented as he unleashed the Kaden, deflecting the rain of projectiles and sending them askew. He must have taught himself how to do it, given how no one from the main branch would have taught him out of tradition, a true genius of their generation. She'd often thought that it was a mistake he was born in the branch family of their clan when he was so talented. Oh, come on, Kiba shouted from next to her as the technique came to an end and revealed her cousin standing in the center of a smooth crater formed by the spiraling dome of chakra. He almost had him. In contrast to her agitated teammate, Hinata felt relieved he hadn't been hurt by Naruto's attack. She didn't want them to fight to begin with. At the same time, she didn't see how Naruto could win now. The Kaden was the perfect defense of their clan and her cousin had the upper hand at close-range combat. Grr, Naruto, better have something else up his sleeve, Kiba continued. I swear, if he loses now after all that talk from before I'll never let him hear the end of it. Oh. Naruto couldn't keep the surprise off his face as his opponent stood in front of the clones unbothered and self-assured. In his defense, Hinata hadn't mentioned he could do that. Even if she had, it didn't change the fact that beating him would be much harder now. There is no need to be surprised, Neji calmly stated. Like I said before, your fate was determined ahead of time. You cannot defeat me. No matter what you do, you will lose here. That wiped the look of surprise off their faces and replaced it with a series of frowns. The original Naruto gave the signal for them to attack while getting ready to swap with a pre-prepared tagged clone that was under the transformation technique. That was when Neji threw down several smoke bombs of his own and turned Naruto's own strategy against him, using the gray veil to conceal himself from their view. The clones that were inside of the smokescreen began dying in earnest and, before Naruto could make a swap with one of the clones he had set up for that purpose, the spares were speared with kunai and their destruction triggered the tags attached to them. I pity you, Neji said from within the smoke cloud. Just like Lee, your ambitions will come to an end against an opponent whose ability was simply able to undermine your strategy. Your efforts were in vain because you could not see what was written in stone from the moment I was your opponent. Don't listen to him, Naruto thought to himself as he grew increasingly aware of the dwindling number of reserve clones. It was almost as if he felt their demise through a phantom sense of pain from within the veil, but he instinctively pushed that to the back of his mind as he focused on defense. He pulled out the barrier tags and set them around him in the 4 points of the cardinal directions, holding a fifth one in his offhand while a concussive tagged kunai found its way into his dominant one. A trio of kunai with explosive tags of their own broke through the smoke towards Naruto, who flung his own towards them. All 4 went off on impact and blinded Naruto further as the force and smoke billowed, forcing him to cover his eyes. He channeled chakra into the barrier tag in his hand to be safe, and it fed that chakra into the force surrounding him to form a defensive barrier invisible to the naked eye. That was when a spread of 5 shuriken broke through the smoke from the front, meant to make him move. The Hyuga came from the side in an attempt to flank him when he did so, having thrown the shuriken so that they curved. It was useless as the 5 shuriken impacted the barrier and fell to the ground, leaving Naruto with no need to move as Neji skidded to a stop 2 feet away from the barrier. Had fate been kinder, perhaps you could have prevailed against one of the others, he said before spinning in place while wreathing himself in chakra and expanding it. A deafening, screeching noise came from the grinding of the Kaden against the invisible bulwark erected by the barrier tags set around him. The 2 chakra-based defenses clashed against one another while the lingering smoke dispersed at the gale created from the rotation, but the difference between them was evident. One was meant to repel through what amounted to a thin film of chakra made into a bulwark, while the other was meant to be the whole solution as both an offense and defense. Even if the Kaden hadn't sheared it open faster than his chakra could replace the layer being scraped away, the ground gave out from the constant grating and unanchored the perimeter tags. The net result was the same in the end. Naruto's defense failed and the Kaden fully expanded, allowing the spinning dome of chakra to sweep him up entirely. The only mercy was that he hadn't anchored himself to the ground with a variation of the wall walking technique. If he had, it would have ground away at his flesh and bones until they were scraped raw and turned to dust. Instead, it shredded the front of his jumpsuit and the skin of his forearms instinctively raised in defensive before it tossed him aside violently. I can't lose like this, he thought as the world spun from his head, smacking the ground as he tumbled messily. He bit down on his own lower lip to avoid losing consciousness from the impact and then tensed his legs and hands while flooding them with chakra beneath the surface. They caught the ground on the next impact and allowed him to remain on all fours as the compacted earth gave away from the momentum, leaving him digging a trench several feet long as he skidded to a stop and panted. Oh, oh, oh. Sakura found herself wincing at the sight of Naruto on his hands and knees, bleeding from the impact of the attack and the bad spill he took. She'd seen him take worse beatings on their missions and in the forest of death, but those weren't from people who came from the same village. They hadn't expected that last attack, and now her teammate was paying the price for it. That looked really bad, Ayame said, a sisterly sort of worry in her voice and eyes at the sight. Someone should call the match before he gets hurt anymore. He still has a chance if he can get around that defense, Sakura told her as she glanced to Karin. The girl was completely silent, but her face and body language made it clear that she was feeling a whole slew of negative emotions. Her eyes were wide with worry, at the same time angled into an expression of pure fury at Naruto's opponent. Her jaw was tight from clenching her teeth behind her pursed lips so hard they were trembling. She unconsciously rubbed a spot on her arm like there was a nervous itch there, and it looked like she was doing all she could not to rush out of her seat to be by his side. That was when a shout that eclipsed the majority of the crowd nearby came from one of the rows above them. Get the fuck up, Naruto. Sakura turned her head towards it to see Kiba standing up, an almost feral expression on his face. Next to him was Hinata, who looked horrified at the sight of Naruto being injured by her cousin. There were actually tears in her eyes, which only seemed to further fuel the Inuzuka's rage. He jumped down and passed them until he reached the railing that separated the audience from the field. I didn't lose just so you'd hand the win over to that bastard. He yelled at Naruto, likely held back from jumping over it by an Anbu officer appearing next to him and setting a finger to his forehead. Whatever they did worked quick enough that he only managed to get another 2 words out before he passed out. Stand up. Sakura watched as the officer disappeared with him in a body flicker, likely to go and give him a dressing down in private. Either way, the encouragement did seem to have some effect. Because when she turned back to the field, Sakura saw Naruto was on his own 2 feet again. Oh, oh, oh. It said something that, even with the roar of the crowd, Naruto could hear Kiba yelling at him to get up. Everything hurt, blood seeped from the tears in his skin and his mouth, and the world seesawed. But Naruto managed to get back up onto his feet and faced his opponent once more. Surrender, Neji said from the distance. If we go any further, I can't guarantee you'll survive. There's no shame in accepting the defeat that fate has laid out for you. The more you struggle against it, the more it will hurt until the very end. Not after everything they've done for me this last month and the promise I made, Naruto said. He had to beat him with what Karin and Sakura taught him, and it had to be under his own power if he was going to keep his promise to Hinata. Otherwise, it really would all be meaningless. He drew a kunai with a tag on it and beckoned his opponent forth. Bring it on. So be it. Neji darted forward and Naruto threw the kunai. The Hyuga dodged the tagged kunai and threw a shuriken towards it upon recognizing it was a transformed clone. He wouldn't let him risk pulling off another substitution or being caught in the explosion that could follow. Then he skidded to a stop in front of Naruto in the gentle fist stance. You are in range of my divination. There's no escaping now. Naruto only stilled his lungs and smirked as Byako pounced from behind and suddenly exploded in what looked to be a fresh veil of smoke. Oh, oh, oh. Sasuke found himself thinking that Naruto had been all talk when his opponent saw through the final transformed clone. Of course he would have seen through it when Naruto had done that very same thing earlier in the match. His assessment changed when he caught sight of the green rim tag on the kunai, since his Sharingan allowed him to perfectly memorize details, and he had caught sight of all of the ones that Naruto had used to this point during the match. It wasn't like the others, but his opponent didn't know that. He didn't think twice about it, believing that Naruto had run out of tricks and focusing solely on the finishing strike. That was why he didn't see the clone holding a mask and attaching the tag to it before the shuriken impacted the clone. The hit dispersed it, but not before the mask tumbled free and Sasuke caught sight of what looked to be blood on the back of it. A chakra construct formed from that point and touched down on the ground for a split second. Then it pounced, upturning the dirt around its paws as it speared towards the Hyuga. His opponent's eyesight spared him from having his bones broken as he twisted his body to avoid the impact, but the surprise of it left him breathing in the smoke that came from the tag on the mask before he jumped back further. Naruto meanwhile used his chakra to anchor his hands on the tiger and was pulled out of the smoke cloud, gasping for air as the tiger ran alongside the wall using chakra on its paws. It came to a stop at a safe distance, leaving Naruto mounted on its back and staring down his foe. "When did the leaf get their own puppeteers?" asked the girl from Hidden Sand on the other end of the contestants' booth. They were separated from the rest of the audience to avoid sabotage from the shinobi who were in the audience, though they personally divided into sides from their different villages. Her voice gave away her shock at the fact that Naruto pulled something similar to what the guy with war paint on his face could do. "Not a puppet," the puppeteer said. "No strings attached. It's probably capable of some level of independent action. Might be a summoning." "Doubt it," Shikamaru said from his seat on the bench, head perched on his chin as he watched with a bored expression. He kept his voice lower so that the others from Leaf could hear it. "I didn't see him making any hand seals. Perhaps his tutor provided it for his match," Shino offered as an answer while he stood in front of the railing and observed the match. Unlike his teammate, he at least kept his composure while watching the match. Naruto had been confident that he could defeat his opponent before now, so he likely trained with it over the month. He must have a plan, otherwise he would have used it from the start. Or because he didn't want to give away all his secrets when I was up against him next, Sasuke reasoned. If that was the case, he'd watch to see what it was capable of. Because when Naruto won, it would be Sasuke's turn to deal with it, after rolling over Gaara of the desert. And while he couldn't use the Chidori against his teammate, that didn't mean he hadn't considered a way to make use of his secondary element better. Oh. Naruto removed the expended sealing tag from Byaku's mask. Either the poison was in his opponent's system or it wasn't, and he'd simply beat Neji the old-fashioned way. He anchored himself to the tiger and kept low as he gave the order. "Just like in practice, Byaku." "Understood." Byaku exploded in movement at the command, rushing forward fast enough that it upturned the ground in a straight pounce. The Hyuga's flexibility saved him as he managed to dodge, but his gentle fist counterstrike did nothing against Byaku. It used its momentum to keep going forward before bouncing off the ground, against a tree, and then back at him at another angle as Naruto dropped a concussive tag in their wake. The explosion forced Neji out of his stable guard, allowing Byaku to clip him on a third pass. The speed and weight of the tiger managed to dislocate or break a shoulder, leaving him only one arm to work with as the tiger came around for another angled attack. Neji gritted his teeth as he released chakra from every point in his body and unleashed the Kaden as they came in again. "Up!" Naruto commanded as he created a bulk of expendable clones in front of the spiraling dome of chakra. Byaku hit them and pushed upwards with its forelegs, sending it into aerial roll over the top. It landed on the other side as the dome sputtered out and Neji held his head from Karin's poison spreading faster with the increased activity. "Let's do the finisher we practiced." "Understood." Byaku lunged for Neji again, who moved to avoid it with a notable lack of grace. Naruto jumped off mid-pounce and used the forward momentum to deliver a flying kick that landed solidly and Neji staggered backwards. Shadow clones popped into existence right then and hit him with the combo. One clone delivered a right cross to the face that left him seeing stars. Another used a jumping knee to the chest to knock him into the four clones raising their legs to kick him into the air. Maki. Then the white tiger dropped down on him from above and bounced off his aerial supine figure, sending him downwards. Tiger barrage. Neji hit the ground hard enough that he bounced up by a foot and a pained cry was forced out of his mouth. His entire body trembled as he tried to stand again. Byako promptly placed one paw on his chest and pushed down to pin him into place. This can't be. Not quite as easy as I expected, but it's over, Naruto said. The poison's in your body now and Byako's got you pinned. You're done. Poison. He struggled to breathe with how hard the tiger was pressing until it lightened with a gesture of Naruto's finger. When that last smokescreen Byako released had poison mixed into it. He held up the spent tag. It's not fatal, but it did make you sloppy. A backup plan that I was planning to use on Sasuke, but you forced my hand when you pulled that spinning trick out of nowhere. I don't think even Byako would have been able to get past it if you didn't brush off that last tag kunai as another explosive rigged clone and got caught by surprise. A trick, he insisted. Fate has been beaten, Naruto finished for him. I'm the one standing here and now, thanks to everything the others did for me over this last month. Sure, if they hadn't helped me and given me the encouragement I needed, you might have won. There's only so far you can go alone, but with others you can break free of whatever chains fate has wrapped around you. Do you? There was a note of caution in his voice. It was almost as if he was afraid to ask. Do you really think it's possible to escape fate? Believe it, Naruto said in absolute certainty. Now are you going to call it or do I have Byako bat you around like an oversized toy because fate insists that I'm going to lose? Neji seemed pensive at that for a long moment. Then he deactivated his eyes. I am no longer able to fight. I forfeit the match. The crowd cheered at the conclusion on the match, music to Sarutobi's ears in the wake of both the sportsmanship presented and the outcome. Pride filled his old heart. He couldn't help but smile beneath the veil obscuring his mouth as Naruto withdrew the creature back into the mask and waved at the crowd. An excellent opening match, said the Cage as he observed as well. Both combatants proved themselves to be prepared for multiple scenarios, keeping their hands hidden until necessary, a necessity in our profession. Indeed, they used the advantages bequeathed to them both well. Their resourcefulness should be taken into account when the time comes for the judgment. The fact that the young Hyuga managed to perform one of the techniques reserved for his clan's main branch, and looked like he was getting ready to perform another, spoke of true talent. More so because he could not have possibly been taught them, given how Sarutobi had seen little break in tradition from their clan. Between him and his other apprentice from the preliminaries, it was clear that Guy was doing something right with his students. Just the same, Naruto's tactical fighting had proven he was capable of utilizing the basics to an efficient degree, with the versatility that came from being without a specialization or heralding from an active clan. For all the talk of how clan-raised shinobi had more resources to work with, many detractors seem to forget that they were also limited to a narrowed field of specialization due to how they learned to mold their chakra for their techniques. Their weaknesses become ingrained over time, such as the Hyuga being limited to close-range techniques barring few exceptions, which Naruto exploited quite well. I must admit, I found the creature he called forth to be interesting, continued the Cage. It doesn't carry the same air as a puppet, nor a summoning. It's a tool that was created by his clan and recently rediscovered. That is all that can be said on the subject for the moment. However, I imagine it will make for a good showing against your eldest son should they meet one another in battle. Curiosity briefly danced in the foreign Cage's eyes at the mention. Perhaps, but for now, I will content myself with the results of the next match. It is highly anticipated after all. Oh. As he followed behind Neji, who was being carried to the infirmary room on a stretcher because of the poison. In the corridor, Naruto winced. The ache of where he had been skinned and the soft bruising that came from where he had been smacked against the ground became pronounced with the loss of adrenaline. Despite that, he considered it a small miracle he didn't get his tenketsu blocked and hoped that the bolstered healing from the fox would kick in soon enough. Still, he couldn't help but have a satisfied smile on his face. He had actually won his first match, in front of the old man and everyone. And the people cheered for him when he did. Naruto looked down at the mask in his hands. He won because of everyone's help, even if they hadn't been prepared for that trick Neji pulled out of thin air. But it wouldn't be easy to win again now that everyone was anticipating him using Byakko, and they'd keep an eye out for the poison gas too. Even so, he won. A needling excitement spread throughout his body. He felt compelled to go tell the others and thank them. But he couldn't leave the combatants area because of the rules when it came to sabotage. Then again, a transformed shadow clone wasn't him now, was it? He created one and had it take on an unassuming appearance before handing it the mask. That would be proof to show to Karin and Sakura that it came from him without untransforming in the middle of the stands and getting questions thrown about. The clone then departed down a turn in the corridor while the real Naruto went the other way. There he ran across Sasuke heading in the direction he had just left to get out onto the field. "You were sloppy at the end," he said. "I hope you didn't give away everything you could do there. Otherwise our next match will be short." "Who knows?" Naruto shrugged as he walked forward. "There was more than one mask in that temple. I bet a few of them could give you a run for your money on their own." HMPH. The trademark Uchiha grin appeared on his face as he walked past his teammate. As if, Sasuke. He turned to see Naruto staring at him, cerulean eyes tempered with earnest resolve. Naruto pressed a thumb to his forehead protector bearing their village's emblem. "More than anyone else here, I want to face you. Don't lose." The Uchiha took a moment to register the sincerity in his words before he responded. "Don't forget, I'm an Uchiha." He tapped his own resting on his forehead. "I'll wipe the floor with him and then it'll be your turn." Oh oh oh. Naruto was amazing, wasn't he? Ayame said cheerfully, still clapping even after he had departed. Sakura breathed easier as she nodded. Despite the surprises, the first of her teammates had managed to get his victory in the tournament and came one step to his very vocal dream of becoming Hokage. It made her proud that she had done something for his sake, that she was useful. Karin, on the other hand, was shaking. Sweat dotted her paling face and her breathing was labored. It looked as though she had caught something. "What's wrong?" Ayame asked as she ran her fingers along the younger girl's face. "Are you okay?" "I just feel a bit ill with worry," she claimed, standing up. "Forgive me, I just need a moment and I'll be right back." She slipped out of the row and then ran up the stairs to the entrance of the corridors, presumably heading towards the bathroom. "I hope she'll be okay," said the ramen waitress with concern nestled with her eyes. "I'm sure she'll be fine," said a third voice. Sakura and Ayame twisted their heads towards the source to see that Kakashi had abruptly appeared. "Glad to see you both here to support the boys." Ayame was immediately smitten with his praise, a luminescent blush prominent on her face. Well, Naruto is like a little brother to me." Sakura, for her part, shifted to her immediate concerns for the next match. She had given Sasuke's bout ample thought, about how it could play out, and to that end she came to her own conclusions on what he could have been taught by their sensei. "Kakashi-sensei, did you teach him genjutsu or how to use the lightning chakra?" A good guess." He nodded his head slightly. Sasuke's Sharingan could allow him to use the Eye of Hypnotism, but his focus is too geared towards the Eye of Insight aspect to weave a genjutsu properly. In addition, his opponent defenses are automatic regardless of his state from what we can assume. So I taught him how to utilize lightning chakra and worked on his speed so that he could match Guy's apprentice. She should have been relieved at learning that he would at least have a better chance of survival than Lee did. Yet her heart couldn't stop thundering in her chest at the prospect of him having to fight that sand shinobi. Perhaps sensing this, Kakashi leaned forward and slightly rustled her hair. Have faith, Sakura. She nodded silently as Sasuke emerged onto the field and his opponent followed suit, landing from upon a floating cloud of sand. Oh, oh, oh. Karin held her chest, taking deep breaths as she supported herself against one of the walls within the corridors. She could feel his chakra amidst the crowd, mingling in place of an Anbu officer. Kabuto didn't move when she did, so he wasn't chasing her, but she wouldn't be able to rest in comfort unless she was very far away from here. Orochimaru was already there, having taken the Kazecage's place. She didn't know how or when he had done so, but it did explain how he had gotten sand on their side. Worse, he was in a perfect position to assassinate the Hokage with the other four who were disguised as two through the use of a technique while the other cage only had one guard. Wait, no, that wasn't right. There was a subtle, almost ethereal pocket of chakra beneath him, expanding like a bubble. The signature was familiar too, Naruto's tutor. Gamma was resting beneath the Hokage somehow, hiding in his shadow if she had to guess. She took a deep breath and forcibly ignored the familiar signatures of Orochimaru and Kabuto, which took some doing given her powers usually magnified when she was afraid to focus on threats. The refined focused on her mind's eye spread over the crowd in the arena, some of the signatures belonging to the people in the audience. A good deal of them were foreign signatures, probably sleepers, but some she recognized as the Anbu who occasionally exchanged shifts while watching her. They weren't all positioned around as guards like Kabuto was pretending to be. Instead, they were sitting with the crowd. Was the Hokage actually anticipating an attack or were they simply having a day off? The former was the more likely scenario. In that case, assuming they had other measures in place she didn't know about, they might be able to fend off the worst of the invasion. Either way, Karin wouldn't be able to stay. If the village was destroyed, Orochimaru would be displeased by her inability to bring Naruto to him, something she refused to do after everything he'd done for her, and would punish her. If the village survived, she'd be pegged as a spy soon enough. They had to do a thorough investigation on how they were infiltrated after an invasion, and Karin didn't doubt at least most of the sound forces had been given specific instructions to either capture or escort her, Naruto, and Sasuke to his nearest base. All it would take was one prisoner and one T&I appointment. Then there would be one Uzumaki joining them both. There was really no choice but for her to run away. I got so sloppy, Karin chastised herself. I knew from the beginning and told myself that there was no happy ending, but Naruto made me so happy with how he was just so straightforwardly warm that I fell in. Oh no. The realization that slowly dawned on her left her weak in her knees, forcing her to lean her back on the wall and slide down it until she was curled up. I fell in love with him, didn't I? Or at least as close as love got for her. It wasn't like she had much experience besides the familial love that she had for her mother. The affection she felt for Naruto was different in irrefutable ways. She couldn't mistake one for another. The boy was a year her junior, not much to look at, and didn't have much to his name. But she liked his personality, how he was so bright in life, and the texture of his chakra. He never asked her for anything and gave her everything, from his trust to the sort of life she wished she could have had. She was happier around him than she had been in a long time, a sort of happiness that she did her best to make sure he got to experience as well by helping him. Her focus then shifted to the signature coming down the corridor, the familiar warmth undeniable. It was Naruto, or a clone of him judging by the chakra level. He was in a rush, even though she couldn't feel anyone chasing him, and turned the corner into view. What are you doing here, Naruto? Karin asked as she wiped her eyes. You shouldn't be breaking the rules like this by coming here. You knew it was me. He asked. She recognized her mistake when she looked up and saw his transformed brows closing in and looking pensive. It was another sloppy mistake on her part. She hadn't been looking and recognized his chakra before his appearance. Karin bit her lower lip in thought of what lie to tell, and then decided against it. This was a clone, not the original, and she was getting ready to run away while everyone was distracted with the most anticipated match of the finals. This could be her last chance to see Naruto in any shape or form, and if she went without getting everything off her chest, it would only weigh her down further. She needed closure. That would be the best way to describe it, to know if her feelings would have been reciprocated or rejected. Either one would be fine as long as she didn't have to think on the endless what ifs that came from not getting an answer. I'm a censor, Naruto. She stood up and pushed herself off the wall. I can sense your chakra whether or not you're transformed. We're alone so you can drop it. The clone did as told and dropped the transformation and revealed a mirror-perfect image of the lovable blonde she had come to know. In his hands was Byaku's mask. That's amazing, Karin-chan. I had bought this so you wouldn't be surprised, but I guess I didn't need to. You mean the original you, she corrected him. Shadow clones are really amazing. You look just like him, down to the last detail. So you can sense that too. He scratched at his cheek. It seemed like he was unsure of whether or not he should feel complimented when he was a clone. Will you listen to me? She asked. I have something important I want to say, and I want you to listen to the end and be honest with me. Okay. I guess I can, but you'd really be better off talking to the original if it's that important. I'm too much of a coward to do that, too much of a coward to do anything else besides run away. She took a deep breath and then looked him square into his peerless cerulean eyes. Naruto, I was told to capture you by a very bad man. His expression went from confused to wary almost immediately. What do you mean? When you told me your name in the forest, I wanted to know more about my clan, but the village I was with wouldn't let me stay unless I agreed to send them information. But, in truth, I was a spy for another person and only joined them because he told me to a year ago. He told me that I was supposed to knock you out and bring you with me to him while something bad happened during the finals. So, he swallowed and his breathing staggered. He was afraid to ask. Everything we did was just to get close to me. It was real, if that's what you're asking, she claimed. I did things for you because I wanted to, not just because of my orders. I wish I could say that it wasn't tainted by the fact that he told me to get close to you, but it is. I just wanted to get to know you and they poisoned that innocent wish. Believe me, Naruto. Please. The clone licked his lips, trying to form the words. Were you going to actually do it? She slowly shook her head. Naruto, this man and his apprentice are terrifying. I'm scared of them both. But I can't take you to them knowing how they'd hurt you. I wouldn't wish that on my asshole teammates, let alone you. But if I don't bring you in, then they'll punish me. What will they do to you? He asked. If you don't bring me, who knows? She brushed her hair behind her left ear and looked down at where he had bitten her weeks ago. I'm useful, but they don't need my mind intact. Maybe they'd just mess with my head until I was a brainless husk that they used to keep experiments alive, if I was lucky. Well, what about the old man? The clone nodded as he strung his thoughts together. Yeah, we can go to him together. He'll protect you. I can't. She'd already thought about how that would end. The penalty might be reduced to a long prison sentence if the information I knew was minimal, but you saw the scars on that man's head during the written exam from being tortured for information. The information I have is considered S-class in terms of secrecy and who I was spying for, so they'd execute me after they got what they wanted, however they could. S-class, he seemed to pale at that. You don't mean, I never cared that you're a Jinchuriki, if that's what you're getting at. Her fingers reached up and gently stroked his cheek. She felt a slight pang in her heart when he flinched at her touch, but continued. You're not like that, Gaara. You're in control of yourself and your seal is better. I never once felt threatened around you. In fact, I'm in love with you. The clone stood there, dumbfounded at the admission with his mouth partly opened. He didn't know how to respond to that. Even so, Karin continued to vent her feelings to him. I've fallen in love with you. Her voice cracked at the end, and the tears clawed their way out from behind her eyes. I'm happy being around you, and I want to make you happy. The thought of living in this village and being with you made me so excited and miserable at the same time, because it was a dream that I knew wouldn't come true. She clung to him tightly, clenching the back of his jumpsuit and crying miserably on his shoulder. Why did I have to meet you? Why did you have to make me feel this way when it could only end badly? It's like I'm being punished for wanting to know more about my people and you, mocking me with promises of what could have been. Naruto's clone went rigid for a moment, stilling his lungs and tensing his muscles as if to shake her off. Then he embraced her and patted her on the back in silence. It was all he could do. Karin pulled herself together after a minute or so. She leaned back so that she faced him properly, so close their foreheads could touch. That's why I'm running away now, while I can. I can't betray you, and I can't stay here. So I'll disappear and run until I find someplace they hopefully can't find me. Don't go. There was a strained hitch in his voice. We'll find some way for it to work out. You didn't want to do anything bad. You didn't have a choice, right? I can't. Her fingers found themselves on the back of his head, nestled in his hair. We won't see each other again. I'm too much of a coward to risk staying, and too ashamed to even admit it to the real you. Even now, I just wanted to know if you'd forgive me for everything. The real me would. There was no doubt in his voice. Please, don't. She silenced him with a kiss, pressing against his lips in a fevered and desperate attempt to capture a moment that would never come again. While the clone was distracted with the kiss, to the extent of dropping the mask, she pulled out a kunai as stealthily as possible. She didn't want him to see it coming or see his face distorting when she eventually plunged it into his body, clone or not. So she embraced him after breaking the kiss and whispered gently into his ear. Thank you for everything, Naruto. And then the memories came rushing to Naruto in the middle of talking to Shikamaru and Shino, the former lazily leaning on the railing and the latter keeping his eyes on Sasuke and Gaara as they stood opposite each other on the field. He reeled backwards, stumbling over his own feet and then falling onto his rear. The others looked to see that he was covering his mouth, a spot of red on his cheeks. Shikamaru's head craned around from his perch on the railing and he eyed Naruto wearily. Naruto, what was that? He couldn't find the words or emotions. Not when the memories all came rushing at him at once. He could recall the sight of her tears, the sweet scent wafting from her skin, and the softness of her kiss. I have to go. Naruto fled back into corridor just before the participants' booth and leaned against the wall, trying to grasp what was happening. Did that really happen? How did he know it wasn't just a fantasy or a delusion? He could be worrying over nothing, yet, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that it was real. He had to test it somehow. He rapped his knuckles against his head and frowned as he tried to think of a method. Then he abruptly stopped and looked at his clenched hand. It clicked, and he created 2 shadow clones. Go down the stairs and play a game of Jenkin, he ordered. Loser pops himself and the winner comes back. They did so, disappearing from his line of sight. He paced back and forth for a full minute before the memory returned. The clones had ended up getting the same results due to the similar train of thought until one of them decided they were getting nowhere and dispelled itself. The other came into view 10 seconds later and shrugged. Okay, so I get the memories of my clones. He slid back against the wall and held a hand against his head, ignoring the cheers coming from outside in lieu of the discovery. That means it was real. The clone looked depressed as well before a sudden determination crossed its face. I'm going to go check to see if she's left. It ran away, leaving the original alone with his thoughts. She said that she had fallen in love with him and then kissed him. Then she ran away. He wasn't sure what to feel there. Just thinking about the kiss left his blood pounding in his ears and his heart hammering at his chest. And yet, she was gone, and now he had to think about everything and question whether she was telling him the truth or just following orders. How do I feel about her? Naruto wondered as he sat against the wall. He'd felt safe around Karin. And she was always encouraging and helping him. He wasn't sure if he loved her in a romantic sense, but he was sure that he cared for her enough over this last month that he'd be willing to put his life on the line to save her. Right now, though, he felt a myriad of other feelings. He was still flustered from the kiss, which was nothing like what he felt when he and Sasuke had that accident that they swore they would never talk about again. He was sad at the deception, like a weight in the pit of his stomach. All this time, he had trusted her. He let her into his life and home without a second thought, and it had been orchestrated from the beginning. When he thought about the life they could have had back in the village together, only for it all to be gone now, it made the weight in his stomach heavier. He tried to think about where she could run off to, just so that he could track her down. It was too much to hope the clone would be able to catch up to her. Chances are she was long gone, and she could sense his chakra, so it wouldn't take her any effort to hide or avoid him. There'd still be a chance if she was in the village, but what she said about how the old man would have to treat her as a spy also made him sick to his stomach. Should he just let her run away then? Maybe, but he didn't want to let her leave him behind. That much he knew for certain. And he didn't think she wanted to either. Even if she was acting as a spy, she accepted him for what he held inside of him and never once looked at him with disdain because of it. He would at least try to get the old man to show mercy to her. But, whoever it was that scared her into running away, and trying to play him like a chump in the first place, they were going to pay for this. It was one thing to try and come at him as an enemy, but this was unforgivable. They dangled family in front of him, the one thing in the world he always wanted and never could have, and then used that to mess with him. The clone returned about 2 minutes later. It was short of breath. She's taken by Akko. Naruto groaned as he gritted his teeth. There was no way they would catch up to her if that was the case. Darn it. Now we'll never find her. I don't think she knew that we would gain the memories of a clone when they were destroyed, the clone said, sitting across from the original. If she did, she probably wouldn't have said anything. I still hate that she left, and that someone put her up to it. Maybe if we figured out who that is, then we could do something about it. Naruto scratched his head in thought before speaking aloud again. It has to be someone who knows we're a Jinchuriki. But that's just about all the adults in the village. Even if the old man would put them away, someone could have spilled it. The clone shrugged. It was true enough. But they also know that Gaara is also one, and currently fighting Sasuke. Crap. Naruto leapt up and grabbed him before he could run off to tell them to stop the match. Remember what she said before? She sounded so sure that Sasuke wouldn't be hurt too badly during the match. If she knew that much and that he's also a Jinchuriki, they might be in on it too. The clone settled down, and Sasuke's eyes are supposed to be super rare, so whoever is after us might want them. So it'd have to be someone who knows we're a Jinchuriki, possibly works for another village, and probably wants Sasuke's eyes. Do we know someone that fits those three things? They realized at the same time and slapped their foreheads with their palms. The creep in the forest of death. They had to have known, Naruto said. They knew how to screw up the seal on our stomach and messed up our chakra in the first place. From what we learned this month, that sort of thing means you know what you're doing or it goes bad. And they put one of Sasuke too and left us alive after beating us, the clone continued. They did that because they wanted us to get away, and Karin was from the same village, so they could have spoken to her anytime before the rest of her team left. If they wanted her to bring us to them, then chances are they could be hiding somewhere close, or even watching her seat. Then we lure them and whoever it is that's working with them out and then pound them, Naruto decided. And then we'll try to find her somehow. She's a censor, but we still have Suzaku and can fly. Maybe we can get Kiba to loan us Akamaru to track her by scent. Spurred by this revelation, Naruto continued to talk to his clone and essentially bounced ideas off of himself in hopes of comprehending who it was that was threatening Karin and how to find her. While they talked, both were blissfully unaware of the small insect nestled in the original's blonde bed of hair. It sat there, listening with the intent of relaying it to the living hive it served. Oh, oh, oh. Sasuke leapt back and then darted to the side as three flowing streams of sand reached out to grab him, arching from behind his opponent and acting as another set of arms while his primary ones remained crossed. In a practiced and swift motion, he flung four kunai towards the red-haired boy. The path was direct and thus easy to read, blocked as a surge of sand rose in front of him to intercept them. Now, he kicked off the ground at full speed, mirror wheel eyes spinning in place as the path to take was laid out in front of him. Surprise found itself on his opponent's face as Sasuke suddenly vanished from his untrained sight as the wall of sand lowered. Closing in as a black blur, he punched through the sand that appeared sluggishly as it tried to cover Gaara's blindside and delivered a double-legged jumping kick that had the full backing of his speed behind it. They both flew as a result, Sasuke riding the boy as he sailed airborne. Before the sand armor that cracked violently under the kick started to entrap his feet, he chambered his legs and then pushed off. The force sent Sasuke backwards in a somersault as Gaara crashed down into the ground, raising a dust cloud that obscured him from view. Sasuke exhaled as he landed, eyes fixed on the dust cloud as it thinned to reveal Gaara being slow to get back onto his feet. Like I thought, even after Rock Lee had kicked him all over the arena, he hasn't compensated for the set speed of his sand by sharpening his reflexes and ability to track. That complacency would be his downfall. Sasuke was never one to sit still. To remain stagnant was the same as death, and if he grew complacent he would never surpass his brother. He rushed forward again only for Gaara to sweep his hand out and send sand surging forward in another attempt to ensnare him. Sasuke used a body flicker, using 3 steps at a speed faster than Gaara could see to get behind him again, and finished the hand seals to unleash a grand fireball large enough to engulf him. The explosion pounded at his ears as it detonated, hot wind and near molten bits of sand and dirt scattering about. But the smoke and dust cleared to reveal a dense shell of sand, surrounding him like a cocoon. Sasuke tossed 2 kunai at it to see just how impenetrable it was, only for them to not even scratch the surface. He felt the ground trembling underneath him. Reflexes kicked in and he jumped away as sand erupted from the ground in numerous geysers. Then they came alive like thick arms with clawed fingers, reaching down and trying to snatch him up. He was fast enough to dodge them as they came crashing down, hitting the ground hard enough to break them apart into loose sand again. Sasuke was on the other side of the field by the time the assault ended. The loose sand flowed back to the shell to reinforce it. He couldn't wait anymore if he was going to break through that defense. He would have to use the Chidori. Oh, oh, oh. Sakura breathed easier as Sasuke escaped from the rain of sand. Good. Kakashi-sensei had indeed been keeping his training up using Lee's approach, attacking quickly to avoid the sand, but if that was the case then he would get tired soon and then. Oh, you're back, Ayame said from next to her. She turned to see that Karin had come back. Is everything alright? I'm fine now, she said, though there was a slight change in her voice that Sakura picked up. She wanted to think that it was just her imagination. But she couldn't help but notice the oddities in Karin's behavior. Her attention was everywhere but the match, spanning instead the audience in search of someone else. She looked towards the participants' booth and found Naruto doing the same, staring in the same direction in search of something. It didn't take her much thought to piece together a picture. Especially not after helping him train so much over the last month. Sakura leaned close and whispered. What are you doing, Naruto? Tension ran through Karin and her head turned swiftly in Sakura's direction. The transformed clone held a finger up to tell her to be silent. Don't give me away. Sakura fought the urge to slap her forehead at him breaking the rules. Even if it was a clone, it was still a violation. What are you doing here? Where's the real Karin? Even wearing the face of his clanswoman, she could make out the sad expression that came over his face at the mention of her. Something must have happened. Sakura, she's gone. And she took Byako with her. What? Sakura asked in a heated whisper. Why would she do that? It's complicated, the clone said. Just keep an eye out for anyone looking closely at me while I'm like this. I think something bad might be happening. What sort of thing? The transformed clone shrugged. I'm not really sure, but what are you two talking about? Ayame asked with her head tilted inquisitively at the sight of the girls huddled together. Nothing, the clone said. The raised eyebrow Ayame had pretty much gave away the fact that she didn't buy it for a second. But all three of them turned their attention to the rather loud chirping noise that came from arena and witnessed Sasuke standing on the wall as lightning crackled in his hand. Oh, oh, oh. Of course Kakashi taught him that technique, Sarutobi mused silently from his seat as he witnessed the lightning growing denser. He acknowledged that it was a technique meant for enemies using similar defensive encampments, but it was also used for assassinations. Should he hit, it would likely be a fatal strike. The Hokage frowned beneath his veil. While death was a very real prospect during these matches, it wouldn't be ideal for the Kage's youngest to be killed in front of him and a crowd. He was about to signal his bodyguard to have the proctor intervene when he heard the Kage speak. Outstanding, came from the Kage, eyes fixed on the Uchiha with an abnormal interest rather than his own son. Those eyes reminded Sarutobi of his wayward student for just a moment, making his aged heart palpate. That moment was just long enough for the young Uchiha to rocket forward, and making it so having the proctor interfere would be too obvious. Using his birthright, he wove in and out of the counter-assault as spikes of hardened sand erupted from the shell. A combination of his momentum and the technique allowed for his hand to penetrate the defense with relative ease. The thought that it had been fatal after all crept into the Hokage's mind in the silence that followed. Then the screaming started. It was a bestial sound, reverberating through the arena and sending a chill down the spines of many veteran shinobi. It was all too familiar to those that had fought the Nine Tails when it had been released years ago and survived. The roar of a tailed beast filled with fury and rage, ready to destroy everything around it. Sarutobi cursed himself for not being suspicious of the Kage's claims. Jinchuriki were more often than not linked to the head of the village. Given the boy's track record and affinity for sand, it made sense that he would be the one to house the One Tail. And while that in itself wasn't a crime, deception was their nature after all. The fact that none of his intelligence sources had figured it out spoke of oversight that was almost inexcusable, if not for the fact that they were looking for Orochimaru. The Uchiha fought to free his arm, a look of primal fear on his face. When whatever that had a hold of him wouldn't budge, he reignited the Chidori in a second. More human scream followed as the arm came free. He hopped back as a long, sinuous appendage chased after him for a moment, only to fall limp onto the ground and suddenly retract into the cocoon. It was then that the feathers began to fall over the arena, a high-level genjutsu technique capable of encompassing the entirety of the audience. There was no excuse for that. Sarutobi exchanged a final glance with the Kage and caught the remorseless and unsurprised gleam within it. Everything clicked at that moment. The hidden sound would stand no chance against the hidden leaf alone. But if they were sabotaged from within, with a mad Jinchuriki to contend with as well, then even they would fall. His guard reached for his poisoned blade only for four kunai to find their way into his chest as smoke billowed from the Kage, filling up the booth. The moment the ethereal feathers started falling, Naruto leapt into action. He didn't shout, he didn't announce what he was doing. He just flung several concussive tagged kunai towards the pair of sand siblings, with the intent of knocking them out before they could contribute to whatever was happening and getting some answers. In a swift, single motion, Tamari spun and unfurled her fan just enough so that it was a repeat of her match with Tenten. The blades of wind hidden within the gale sliced through the tags as the kunai were thrown askew before they could touch them. A surge of insects followed from behind Naruto as he formed clones courtesy of Shino, and both rushed forward in a black cloud with orange masses within it. She immediately unfurled her fan entirely and waved it with a hard spin, wind chakra riding along the gale so densely that everything caught within it was shredded. Naruto, Shino, and Shikamaru ducked inside of the corridor to avoid being caught within the attack, providing an opening for the sand duo. Tamari conjured a whirlwind over the exit to block it while she and her brother leapt down and retrieved their younger brother. Okay. What's going on? Shikamaru asked as he watched the twister churn in front of their only exit. The near-death experience had gotten rid of all the lethargy that had permeated him. We are not safe here. Shino raised his hands and more insects slipped out from his coat to form a dense cloud that he sent down through the corridor. A roar of air came from the turn leading down the stairs as the insects that had gone through the narrow passage were killed, signaling they were under attack from that angle too. Naruto, raise a barrier. Naruto pulled out the barrier tags and used them to form a wall between the three Chunin hopefuls and a hidden sound Junin that emerged from the staircase, having the same arm implants that Shino's opponent from the preliminaries had. The difference between Zaku and Junin was made clear when he raised a single hand and let loose a gust of air pressure, capable of pulverizing them had Naruto not shielded them with the barrier tags. Even still, he continuously fed it chakra to avoid them being blown away. By the time the attack had finished, Naruto was panting as he held up the primary tag. The walls of the corridor between them and the Junin were gouged badly, stone dust floating in the air with a fissure reaching to the floors above and below in front of the barrier. Any stronger and it likely would have completely blown their section of the floor out. The Junin prepared to fire again, this time with both hands, when suddenly they clapped together. They remained frozen like that, along with the rest of his body. Only his eyes moved, and they looked down to where the shadow stretched across the fissure between them and connected. Yeah, no more of that, Shikamaru said as his shadow locked his opponents down, holding the prayer pose. Shino. More insects emerged as Naruto dropped the barrier and they flew towards the Junin. They chewed through his chakra and clogged his air tubes, nibbling at his eyes and face without mercy. They slipped into his mouth when he opened it to scream and went down his throat to clog it as well, denying the man the ability to breathe. Not a minute later, the Junin was dead from either chakra exhaustion, suffocation, or a combination of the two. Most of the insects returned to the living hive. The others scouted ahead. We have to move, Naruto said as he retrieved the tags. The whirlwind behind them finally died. More could be on the way and we can't let those two get away. Shikamaru rubbed the back of his head as he rose to his feet. I still only have a moderate idea of what's going on here. Either of you care to give me some insight into what we're dealing with? In a moment, Shino said as a scouting insect landed on the tip of his finger. It relayed its information to him. Kurenai-sensei is on her way with Kiba and Akamaru. I imagine that she will want an explanation as well. True to word, Kiba, Akamaru, and the Junin leader of Team 8 arrived to see the boys and the corpse of the sound Junin. There was blood on her outfit and a kunai in her hands, a far cry from when she had been lecturing Kiba in private over his performance during the match. Being escorted off was the least of their problems at the moment. Kiba stepped around the corpse and whistled. Damn, Shino. Sometimes you scare me. Shino shrugged and then turned to his Junin, who asked what happened. We had reason to believe that the hidden sand betrayed their alliance with us and is working with hostile forces to undermine the village. We tried to detain their genin, but failed. It's also very likely that Sasuke Uchiha is a primary target for being kidnapped due to his bloodline, if I am correct. We just saw him leave over the wall not too long ago through the window, Kiba said. I think he was chasing after them already. Track them down, she ordered. The Junin are handling the shinobi in the arena, but with the chaos those three have slipped out and the Uchiha boy gave chase. Catch up to them and detain if possible, but otherwise focus on keeping him safe. Understood. Yes, ma'am, Kiba and Shino said. Naruto and Shikamaru, who weren't members of her team, nodded as well. They still had to defer to her given the circumstances. Shikamaru was notably less enthused about it once she departed through the exit, sighing. What a drag. How are we going to even find them? Akamaru and me have Sasuke's scent memorized, Kiba said. His companion barked on top of his head, confirming the same. Might be hard with so many others around, but we can track him. I have a few of my hive on the ones from sand, leaking a pheromone that I can track. Shino turned to Naruto. You can provide transportation, can you not? Exactly how much did you listen in on? Naruto asked cautiously. He didn't ask how he had heard him. It would have been a stupid question. Enough, he answered, pushing up his shades by the bridge as a few of his insects crawled from the inside of his collar. Let us hurry. Oh, oh, oh. The moment the Genjutsu began to fall over the arena, Sakura immediately went to work dispelling it off of her with Naruto's clone following suit. The clone rose up and eyed one Anbu in particular, the likely source, and then dropped the transformation to lunge at him. The clone was immediately dispelled with a hit, but it did cancel out the rest of the feathers falling down. That pretty much confirmed who the one responsible for it was, and Ino's sensei leapt up and cut him in half somehow. Despite that, other foreign shinobi suddenly emerged to attack anyone still awake. And there were loud crashing sounds coming from outside of the arena. Naruto didn't say anything about a full-scale attack, Sakura thought to herself as she looked at all the fighting taking place around her. There were a lot of shinobi that she didn't recognize, but a few that she did. On instinct she went for her weapons, only to remember that she hadn't brought any, when she felt time slow as two shadows were hovered over her. Two sound Junins were flanking her, weapons in their hands as they moved to kill her. Then time sped up again as she turtled herself up in reflex. The two of them fell at her feet, kunai wedged in their brains, and a third shadow lingered above her. It was Kakashi. Sensei, are you okay? He asked. She nodded bitterly, ashamed at the fact that she was helpless again. I couldn't do anything, even after I said I would be better. They were Junin, that's expected. His attention spanned the arena and he made hand seals. Sakura, I need for you to go find Sasuke. He went chasing after his opponent and Kurenai told me that he might be a target. He slammed his hands down and summoned the ninja pug, Pakun. She's already sent Naruto and a few others to get him. They left on a bird of some kind. Pakun will help you track them. Alright. Sakura reached down to the corpse of one of the sound Junin and grabbed his pouch of supplies and weapons. When she looked up, Kakashi had gone back to fighting and left the two of them to their own devices. No more safety nets. Come on girlie, Pakun said. Let's go. Oh, oh, oh. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood opposite his wayward student, trapped within a cage of violet flames anchored by 4 of his followers. The false mask of flesh that was once the cages had been discarded now. It was clear Orochimaru wanted him to see for himself the one who would do harm to the village. Did you coerce our allies into turning against us while wearing his face? He asked as the air between them thickened, loose bits of tile rising from the sheer weight of their chakra opposing one another. A smile stretched across Orochimaru's face. On the contrary, the cage actually agreed to the invasion of his own accord. I simply replaced him along the way here to savor the moment, really. Tell me, Sensei, is your intelligence so incompetent that they were ignorant of the declining state of the hidden sand village? He had been aware of their daimyo's fluctuating decisions to outsource missions. While they didn't have any spies in their shinobi forces, more than one had complained in a drunken stupor at the local pub. All they had to do was have eyes and ears there, as well as within the ranks of their paper pushers. But he didn't think things were bad to the extent they would be willing to start a war. Take note, Sensei. He stretched his hands wide, gesturing to fighting going on around them and the rampaging snakes in the village. The death, the destruction, all of this came out of one man's decision to cheapen his expenses and spurn a village. That single decision caused one of the mightiest villages in the 5 greatest nations to wither on the vine until they were desperate. Even so, I imagine that this was your suggestion to start with. He molded his chakra within his body, readying it and dividing it. The question of whether or not to unveil Jiraiya briefly came to mind, but he decided against it. Not just yet. Well, I may have brought it up, Orochimaru admitted. But it goes without saying that the fact that they would ally with the relatively new village I've established meant that they were reaching the point where it would have happened anyway. I just hastened the process, becoming the wind that turns the pinwheel, as it were. And risked throwing the world into another great war, Sarutobi noted. I would have thought that you of all people, having lived through so much conflict, would understand the necessity of peace. The smile on Orochimaru's face faltered, turning into a frown. Peace. Mankind is incapable of such a thing, merely a moment of stagnation brought about by writing on pieces of paper. They are prone to conflict, and that makes the world progress. The conflict sown here as the leaf crumbles will herald a grand revolution in all things. You speak the same words as the last time. It never changed. Orochimaru continued to search for answers, to make progress, to gather techniques, using conflict and strife as experimenting tools and battlefields as his laboratories. It was saddening. I see you are truly beyond saving. Sarutobi acted. The opening salvo consisted of sending his chakra into the tiles surrounding him and levitating them. He took the wind chakra molded into his lungs and exhaled a layer upon them to give them a cutting edge, followed by a coat of yin chakra to hide them from view, and then sent them flying forward as makeshift shuriken. The wind-layered tile shuriken flew forward like invisible saws and tore gouges out of the rest of the tiles in their wake. Orochimaru countered with a wind style. Great breakthrough, expelling a gust that took hold of the lesser technique and scattered the makeshift shuriken about. Sarutobi overtook the C-rank technique using fire style, Fire Dragon's Flame Bullet. The moment the stream of fire hit the gust of wind, the flames hungrily consumed the wind and quickly turned into a conflagration that seemingly engulfed half the rooftop and his former student, reducing Orochimaru to ashes. The Hokage exhaled, his chest rising and falling notably. The surface of the rooftop ripped as Orochimaru sprang up from behind him with the hiding in surface technique and then lashed out at him with his tongue, which transformed into a large venomous snake. It sank its fangs into Sarutobi's throat and then writhed, trying to tear it out as he grasped it desperately with both his aged hands. Then he melted into mud, which hardened into stone. With the serpent that was once his student's tongue trapped within it, Sarutobi appeared behind his student with his hand flattened to make a chopping motion, wind chakra cloaking it. The sharpened knife hand cleaved Orochimaru's head from his shoulders in a single motion. The stump of his neck burst as a thick, brown serpent lashed out from what should have been a corpse and drove the older man back with the threat of its fangs. It lunged again, opening its maw as wide as possible as a bulge surged through the serpent's length. Orochimaru came out of its throat hole, with the legendary grass cutter blade in his hand. He pierced his old mentor's heart with it, only for it to turn into mud again as the real Sarutobi came into view from a genjutsu-created veil of yin chakra, finishing one set of hand seals and thrusting his hands forward. The mud swelled into an earthen dragon that roared before devouring Orochimaru in a surge of onrushing mire, like a mudslide come to life. It rose up in a spout and then hardened to form a stone pillar. Sarutobi appeared in front of it with a body flicker as he finished another set of hand seals and slammed his palms into it, sending fire chakra surging within to turn its core molten. The pillar turned molten mud collapsed in on itself as he backed away, leaving only a heated slag pile in its wake to cool. The crackling of superheated earth permeated the silence as the audience of Anbu officers and the Sound Four watched in a sort of quiet amazement at the swift and skillful exchange. Kuku, Orochimaru chuckled from some distance behind the old man, breaking the silence. Excellent, Sarutobi-sensei, few would have been able to weather the fluidity of your techniques. Yin chakra to hide a shadow clone made of earth and yang chakra, water combining with it to shape the mud and control its flow, more earth to harden it, and then fire to heat it to the point of being near molten. Such impeccable mastery of control and timing, I expect nothing less from the one who was once called the professor of ninjutsu. And you remain as elusive as ever. When he slipped out of the combination of techniques eluded Sarutobi, but he knew it wouldn't have been that easy. But that won't remain the case. You'll slip up and then that'll be the end. Brave words for an old man, Orochimaru clasped his hands together, causing a pair of coffins to rise from a breach in space. They were identical, marked by kanji for the first and second, and seeing them left a feeling of dread nestled itself in the pit of his stomach. Let's see how long they last in the face of your predecessors. Sarutobi was no fool. As much as he would rather deal with Orochimaru alone, he had no delusion of standing a chance against the first and second Hokages. He flared his chakra into his shadow and it thickened, allowing for the red and white blur to be shot towards the two coffins that stood in front of Orochimaru. Spiraling spheres in both hands, Jiraiya mercilessly slammed them into the coffins and the bodies within before continuing towards a surprised Orochimaru. Arrogant and surprised as he was at the sudden emergence of the Toad Sage, he managed to evade the blow that shattered the rooftop where he once stood. At the same time, Sarutobi breathed out a stream of fire hot enough to incinerate the bodies within before they could be put to use. Well, this is a surprise. Orochimaru locked eyes with his old teammate. To think that you would show up now of all times, Jiraiya. I had no idea you were here. It must have been the lack of perversion that usually followed in your wake. Should I expect the princess as well? Jiraiya had no words. He'd made his peace with what needed to be done. Ah, the silent treatment. Orochimaru chuckled mildly. I suppose this is fine as well. Dealing with you was always the plan. This simply speeds the process up. Sarutobi discarded his Hokage robes to reveal the combat outfit beneath it. Jiraiya, the village has been breached by summonings. On it, he unraveled a scroll and pressed his hand on a symbol in the center, pouring his chakra into it. The net result was that the delayed summoning seals that had been placed around the village last night were tripped, calling forth warriors from Mount Mayuboku to deal with the serpents that had been summoned as well. Jiraiya then readied a kunai as Orochimaru held his sword forward. Their home was being destroyed. That much was clear as the vermilion bird sailed over Konoha with the 4 genin on its back. Naruto looked down at the destruction with a somber expression, wondering just what part Karin played in this. She knew it would happen and said nothing. Despite the Hokage's offer to make it her home, she let it happen out of fear of whoever it was that had been pulling her strings. A snarl drew Naruto's attention to Kiba, who had a practically feral expression on his face as he looked down at the destruction. Debris was scattered, smoke rising from destroyed buildings, and some bodies could be made out below as snakes in the distance continued their thrashing. He slammed his fist down in frustration. Damn it! Suzaku let loose a short, indignant cry at that. Take it easy, Naruto warned. Suzaku is already struggling with this many people as is. He pointed below. How can I take it easy when they're wrecking our home? On the contrary, the circumstances are not as unfavorable as they could be, Shino pointed out. How does this look? Not as unfavorable as they could be, to you? Kiba demanded. Shikamaru poked his head over the side. There are too few bodies for an attack of this scale, especially considering they had the drop on us. Had this been a true ambush, we would see more corpses beyond a few unlucky scatterings. If I had to hazard a guess, most of the civilians are in the process of being relocated to shelters as we speak. Shino adjusted his shades and stared straight at Naruto as he continued. Keep your mind on the mission at hand, and worry about everything else once the dust is settled. Naruto got the underlying message clear enough. Everything related to Karin had to be pushed to the backburner. At least until they got Sasuke, and did whatever else they were supposed to do. Everything else was secondary to that at the moment. He nodded. Are we on the right track? Shino held up a finger as a bug landed on it and he held it close to his ear. Yes. The trio from the hidden sand has escaped over the village wall in the direction we're going. Sasuke's following them from his scent too, Kiba added. His hands roamed for his pockets but found nothing. Hey, does anyone have a soldier's pill I can use for Akamaru if it comes down to a fight? I didn't bring my gear with me to the finals. I'm hoping it doesn't come to that, but here. Shikamaru pulled out the one he had and slipped it into his palm. If we get into a fight, leave Gaara of the desert to me. Naruto said, After a moment of thought, if it came down to it, he would be the best suited against Gaara, as a fellow Jinchuriki. Or so he hoped. A hissing noise sent a chill down their spines from how close it was, and the group looked down to see they were being chased by a rather large snake. Naruto pegged it to be around the same size and color scheme as the one that had eaten him in the Forest of Death. He briefly wondered if they were related before it flung itself towards them. Suzaku, up! The vermilion bird flapped its wings harder to try and lift them, but the additional weight slowed them too much. The serpent's maw opened wide and revealed the fleshy mouth within. Dripping with saliva that led down into a deep dark pit, the cavernous maw grew larger as it neared. And then it was abruptly thrown to the side. The serpent was nailed to the ground by a two-pronged sasumata, just below its head. The giant, magenta-colored toad holding it then took what looked like a sake saucer and brought it down, taking off its head in a single stroke. What the hell? Kiba said incredulously as Shikamaru sighed in relief. The group watched the toad hop off to deal with another snake, more plumes of smoke in the distance giving birth to other toads. Some were bigger and some were smaller. Where did they come from? It was a good question. Naruto bit his thumb and used the summoning technique to find out, slamming his right hand down on top of his left. Sealing script crawled over the back and a small puff of smoke gave way to reveal an orange toad with purple markings, wearing a blue jacket. It looked around for a moment and then turned back to Naruto. Did you have to summon me so high up? Kiba stared at the small, talking toad in confusion for a moment. Then he pointed to the others. Was that you? I wish, Naruto said offhandedly, keeping his attention on the small toad in front of him. Sorry about this Gamakichi, but I wanted to ask if you knew why the toads were appearing in the village. Dad was talking to the guy with the big white hair yesterday. He gestured with his hands on how long the man's hair was. I'm guessing that they might have been planning to help out or something, since you've got a snake problem and all, but I was with my brother. If that's the case, then chances are that this was expected, Shino said. I suspect that the counterattack will begin soon enough. Maybe, Naruto murmured as they passed over the village wall. He spotted a fleeting shadow in the trees below. I think I see him. Kiba stuck his head over the side and sniffed the air. Yeah, it's him. Sasuke. Naruto called, but there was no change in direction or notice. Sasuke continued to chase something further ahead of him relentlessly below the canopy of the trees that thickened the further they went from the village. Shikamaru shook his head. He can't hear us. We're too high up and too far back, with the wind against us. Well, unless one of you gets off, Suzaku can't go any. Naruto's voice was replaced by Sukazu letting loose a sharp, piercing cry as an explosion rocked its underside, with enough force that it lost the ability to fly. Spiraling below, its passengers were only safe from being thrown about by anchoring themselves with their charka as it desperately tried to regain altitude. Naruto, holding a screaming Gamakichi tightly so he didn't go flying, looked towards the source of the explosion. There he found several sound shinobi, standing upon the village wall. They were all staring at him, and suddenly Naruto recalled that he had been a priority target as well. It looked like they were going to have a complication when it came to bringing back Sasuke after all. Oh. Karin's heart froze as she felt Naruto's chakra descend from the sky with the others alongside of him, 9 signatures moving in. She was so naive to think that they wouldn't have a backup plan to grab both him and the Uchiha. They were both outnumbered, and far enough away from the village under siege that no one would come to save them. They felt like they were Chunin at the very least in terms of chakra reserves. 9 of them against a couple of genin, on top of the Jinchuriki that the Uchiha was chasing after, made for very bad odds. They would kill the others and take the 2 Orochimaru desired. They would take Naruto. She trembled on top of Byako at the thought. But this was her only chance. If she didn't run now, she wouldn't be able to get away. Would she be able to run away knowing that the boy she fell in love with was taken, while she was the only one in a position to help him? No, she wouldn't. Damn it. Bayako, we need to go in the other direction. As you wish. The white tiger turned sharply on its front legs and then darted through the rows of trees, towards the direction she felt Naruto had fallen in. It was so stupid, going against every rational thought she had. There was nothing but trouble awaiting her that way, and she knew it. Traitor to Orochimaru or conspirator against the Hidden Leaf, she would end up in a worse position than if she had just ran away. But the feeling in her chest would swallow her if she didn't act. Karin wasn't sure what she could do against those 9, even with the excess tags and Bayako. At the very least, she would be able to pluck him out of danger. She could only hope that it would be enough, and that they made it to him in time. Oh, oh, oh. Red clothes crossed the tiles in a blur, white hair billowing as the toad sage rushed forward with a kunai in hand. The sharpened edge scraped against the steel of the grass cutter, sparks scattering from where they crossed with a metallic ring. Clad in black, the Hokage swung a thick staff of adamantine through the air to crush the opposition. Tiles shattered as the body that seemed to be made of rubber slithered away with deceptive ease, only to spring forward slash with the blade again. The slicing of air, the blur of movement, the ringing of crashing steel, the smashing of tile, these sounds blended in a whirlwind of violence, a representation of the elegant tragedy that was a battle of shinobi that had weathered many years of combat. It was a beautiful and breathtaking display of prowess from an age where one would be cut down before they could make a hand seal, and a time when skill trumped technique on the battlefield. The toad would hop away, taking great and rapid bounds to strike from another angle as the monkey flung what was in hand, a rain of sharp implements with a slight curve in the throwing angles, so they couldn't be blocked as easily. When the serpent slithered away from the rain of steel, the monkey advanced. He crossed with agile steps and swung down the primitive tool, the oldest weapon in the world, to crush everything in its path. The serpent would coil and then lash out with the fang that was his sword, using stabbing strikes meant to pierce the flesh, each moving for a fatal spot. The staff blurred as it intercepted with loud clanks, only for the toad to come down from the above in an attempt to cut off the serpent's head. It would miss as the snake slinked backwards. They split apart, with 2 on one end and the last on the other. Heavy pants left the older man's mouth, sharper and deeper than the 2 others. His age was catching up to him. I'm impressed that weathered and aged body of yours could keep up this long. Orochimaru's Jien wavered, slacking downwards as he caught his breath. It was a false opening with his supple body and flexibility, so neither tried to capitalize on it. Had you still been in your prime, I would consider this a legitimate challenge, Sarutobi-sensei. Let's not pretend any of us are in our prime anymore, he countered. Time flows equally for all, a law of nature one cannot overcome. I wouldn't say that. He reached up and pulled, literally tearing his face off to reveal a younger-looking woman's visage beneath his own. I've already transcended that law of nature. Horror crossed the Hokage and Toad Sage's faces, though it was the former who spoke. What have you done? Merely a simple technique to transfer my soul into another vessel, allowing me to attain immortality, he said as he replaced the flesh mask. Though, I would rather have Tsunade Haime's healing ability. This application has its own rewards in attaining all of the techniques that the world can birth. And, once I attain my next body, I'll be another step closer. The Uchiha boy, Sarutobi realized. That's why you timed your attack until his match, and marked him with your seal. You intend to take his body and his Sharingan. Better than allowing it to die with this village. With only 2 sets left in the world, such a useful tool should be preserved. I will make full use of that, and ensure that it continues to weather the ages. There was no way he could allow Itachi's younger brother to be taken. He had to end this, and there was one technique he could rely on to ensure the kill. The question was whether or not his aged body could bear the strain of it. He was not certain, but at the very least he would ensure that his mad student met his end. Let us dance once more, my old friend. The Monkey King's head emerged from the staff. I'll handle the retreat, so make sure you get the timing right, Sarutobi. He nodded as the head disappeared, and twirled the staff. It compressed itself further into the width and length of a normal staff, all the weight and density concentrating into a narrower weapon increased its destructive capability against a single target. The trade-off in dexterity would be compensated for by threading his muscles with chakra, a practice that he had refined over the course of decades. Yin and Yang, he divided most of his chakra into these two elements within his body, each partition to be released in bursts. He molded the rest into fire chakra as well, a final plan to ensure the kill. Then he held the staff forward and lowered his stance, his muscles tensed for the explosion of movement that was to come. Jiraiya, prepare the oil. Orochimaru chuckled. Kukukuku, planning on making a fin. Sarutobi was in front of him before he could finish the sentence. It was a perfect body flicker that left no trace behind of movement, closing the distance in less than the time it took to blink. He swung the staff in a straight cross to knock his head off. It was too easy to avoid, even if too fast for any ninjutsu technique that required a hand seal. Orochimaru leaned forward on reflex, lowering his head while spearing the point of the Jien forward to impale the old man. The blade passed through the body that faded from existence, and the real body appeared behind him. Surprise flashed on Orochimaru's pale face at the abruptness. Sarutobi used the staff like a spear, with his front hand as a guide and his rear hand sending it forward to pierce the heart of his foe. Intent to kill was behind the strike, every sense screaming that it would be a fatal blow. A lesser man would be frozen in fear, and have his heart torn from his chest in the wake of such murderous intent. But not Orochimaru. He twisted his body, avoiding the stabbing motion to bring his own blade around. It met the neck of the aged shinobi and passed clean through. Instead of a spray of blood, the head and body faded from existence with no resistance, a second clone taking the place of the real one, whose presence Orochimaru felt behind him. Time slowed for the two as Orochimaru turned his head. Still in the midst of his previous dodge and strike, he was vulnerable. The expression that froze on his face made that much clearer as he met the merciless eyes of his former mentor. It was a simple technique at its core, born of two of the basics techniques that would become the Academy 3. Using chakra to hyper-vitalize the body and strengthen the muscles, one would cross the distance between oneself and their opponent in a flash of a second. Yang chakra was better suited for his old body, giving it the spring he had in his youth, so the speed didn't tear him apart. However, any trained opponent would react to the straightforward attack by countering, cutting down the easy-to-read strike. That was when the standard clone technique came into play. Layering oneself in yin chakra before another explosion of yang to body flicker again, it would create an afterimage of the first attack while moving behind them for the second strike. The key was the timing and synchronizing of both techniques. Striking from behind, the enemy would be felled unless they were of the highest caliber, possessed instinct akin to a sixth sense, or a bloodline limit capable of avoiding it. Orochimaru was certainly the former. So he twisted his body to avoid, seeking to land a killing stroke with as much strength as he could, thus killing the elderly Hokage. It would cut through a second clone, another layer of yin chakra in his image projected at the moment the killing intent was palpable in the midst of the strike. Completely devoted to ensuring one's survival by avoiding death, and seeking to capitalize on the seemingly fatal blow, they would unleash one of their own. It created a true opening for a split second as the real attack came from the resulting blind spot. That split second was long enough for a veteran shinobi to capitalize on. With a body strengthened to its peak, the agility of a monkey, and a staff as hard as diamond, the killing stroke was made as he swung with everything he had through his enemy's abdomen to tear them in two, such was the Monkey King's dance. The blow went through, and Orochimaru was torn in half from the sheer force behind the swing. But he wasn't dead. He'd modified his body too much to die so easily. Without warning, snakes emerged from both the bottom and top halves, bearing their poisoned fangs towards the aged veteran. Sarutobi angled the staff downwards and held his breath, focusing on gathering fire chakra into his lungs. Enma kept to his word on handling the retreat, extending on his own accord. The end Sarutobi had braced was sent backwards diagonally to where Jiraiya was, having finished kneading his chakra into oil. Sarutobi landed and then spat the converted fire chakra in his lungs into the stream of oil that flowed from Jiraiya's lips, right as Orochimaru pulled himself together. Oil and flames mixed into a burning wave of liquid fire. It surged forward and crashed into the violet flames that composed the barrier, engulfing the snake Sannin in the process. The flames flared bright white and blinded everyone who laid sight upon it. "Keep up," Pakun said as he sprinted forward through the ruined streets of the Hidden Leaf, just ahead of Sakura. They were ants amidst the chaos unfolding, fleeing as the giant toads and snakes waged war, and buildings came toppling down. Sakura ignored the destruction of the familiar streets that were lined with rubble and flames as best she could to keep up with the pug. It left her unnerved to see so many places that she had once gazed upon in passing in shambles. Then an unconscious moan of pain reached her ears and drew her eyes to an older woman pinned under the rubble nearby. Sakura recognized her as the tailor of the clothing shop her mother brought her to for fittings and ran towards her to help. "Leave her," Pakun ordered as he turned around. "Remember your orders." Sakura looked to the woman and noticed crimson slowly pooling beneath the rubble. Had her legs been crushed? "But, as we speak, I caught 10 cents heading in the same direction as your teammate and peers. Every second we waste here is one that could spell disaster for them. Besides, there's nothing you can do anyway. I can smell she's lost too much blood and won't make it another minute. You can't treat that with the first aid lessons they teach in the academy." Sakura's heart fell into her stomach as she recognized the truth in his words, staring at the older woman as her breathing grew shallower. "It feels wrong. I know, but that's war." He turned back towards the wall. "Now come on." She turned away from the dying woman and ran towards the wall that had been breached, Pakun leading her through it once more. She couldn't do anything for the tailor, but she could for her teammates at the very least. That had to be enough for now. Oh, oh, oh. The 9-sound shinobi moved through the woodlands and trees towards where the giant bird had fallen. They had their orders and would carry them out, lest they ended up earning the wrath of Orochimaru or be left to the non-existent mercy of his right-hand man. How hard could it be to capture 2 boys? "Have they moved?" Han asked their tracker. His ears had their sensitivity increased to hear the heartbeats and footsteps of others, making tracking them child's play. "Insects are buzzing everywhere, but I can make out all their hearts ahead. One of them is yammering about how they won't leave the mud behind. It must have been injured in the fall." Sari scoffed at the stupidity. "They're kids all right. They should have been running. Not that it would have helped them." "Let's do this," Nawan said. The outline of an amused smirk formed on his mask. "Kill all of them besides the blonde and slap him with the seal. The Uchiha comes afterwards." The kids came into view, their weapons drawn as they huddled together in a circle while the one with a pineapple haircut for a head tried to convince the boy with markings on his cheeks to leave behind the mud, which had a bone sticking out of it. Han came to a stop and then gestured for them to move in for the kill. He would remain behind to spot any traps they could pull, though he was skeptical they would be able to. They wasted no time, using a body flicker to close the gap in distance before they could react. There was no need for hostages, so they didn't hesitate to plunge their kunai into the heads of the children. Such was the nature of war. Then the air trembled as an abrupt chain of explosions were set off from what were once the children. Han felt something wet and sticky touch his cheek and reached for it. It was a bit of flesh and blood from either Nawan or Sari's. They were the only 2 who were too slow in their haste to kill to escape from the explosions. The others managed to back away in time to avoid being caught in what was evidently a trap, an oversight on their part. "Fall back," he ordered. Only Karo and Ash fell back into a position next to him, while the other 4 remained where they were. "What are you doing? Can't move," Nemazu said as he stood there shaking. Han noticed that all of their shadows were connected to a thin tendril that slinked across the ground, through the crater formed by the explosions, and into underbrush that wasn't too far from the site. 2 identical figures darted out from the sides of it, skidding to a stop and facing the entrapped Sound team. They were both the feral-looking boy, identical expressions as they crouched on all fours, while a cloud of insects burst out of the underbrush towards Han's detachment. In perfect synchronization, the two turned into spiraling drills that launched themselves towards the shadow-bound group, while the horde of insects descended upon the remaining three. The twin twisters cut through the line from the right and left, a spiraling whirlwind of destruction clawing, gouging, and ripping the four men apart. The churning air surrounding them scattered the viscera and grounded innards, splashing the grass and trees crimson. Hans narrowly escaped as he saturated his body with an outline of earth chakra and used the underground projection fish technique to swim beneath the surface, leaving Karo and Ash screaming as the insects engulfed them utterly as well. Swimming underground, Hans would admit they'd blundered rushing in while thinking they were just children. He emerged some distance from the remains of his teammates only to hear the buzzing of insects intensifying, and the footfalls of the feral pair. Now they were tracking him, but he knew how to deal with that. Making the tiger seal, he used the hiding with camouflage technique. It obscured him from sight and smell, and as a sound shinobi he knew quite well how to hide his own footsteps. They wouldn't catch him as he wormed his way around to grab the blonde brat. Then all he had to do was apply the seal he had been given to suppress his chakra, knock him out, and use the underground projection fish technique on them both before escaping. He couldn't get the Uchiha as well, not with the rest of them dead, but at an acceptable loss considering the circumstances. Hiding his breath as he landed behind the boy unaware, Hans reached out. And then he only knew pain as something slammed into him and left him on the ground in agony. Oh, oh, oh. Naruto frowned as the tables had been turned somewhat with Kiba and Shino losing track of the survivor. It had been a hasty plan that Shikamaru came up with after they crash-landed, after Naruto let Gamakichi return to his home and told the others he had spotted 9 enemies likely to be after them. He figured they couldn't reasonably hope to escape with Suzaku's body destroyed by the impact. It could recover with enough time and yang chakra to reconstitute itself within the surprisingly durable mask, but that meant they were on their own in dealing with the enemy. They only had limited information to work with, but based on the assumption that one of them would be a sound-based tracker, they allowed themselves to be covered by a mass of buzzing insects from Shino, to hide their heartbeats behind the curtain of sound. Naruto's transformed and tagged clones were left in the front to be used as bait and to take the fall, banking on the fact that they wouldn't expect them to have set a trap rather than flee. Shikamaru would entrap them, and the Inuzuka pair would go in for the kill. When 3 of them escaped, Shino sent his horde to follow through with catching the stragglers. Now there was one unaccounted for that neither of their trackers could find, and Naruto doubted he would simply run off after 8 of his companions were killed. Not when whoever it was that gave him the order was the same person that drove Karin away from him in fear. He couldn't help but wonder how far she had gotten when a white blur bounded from behind the nearest tree and passed over Naruto's shoulder. It slammed into the ground behind him hard enough to kick up a plume of earth and dust, which thinned quickly enough for Naruto to see Karin was atop Byakko. Its paws were pressing down on the last sound shinobi that slowly faded back into existence and moaned in agony. Do it, Karin ordered. The tiger construct brought its paw down hard upon the man's head, messily ensuring the kill. Karin, Naruto said softly. His thoughts were muddled as he did so. I heard everything you said to the clone. A look that crossed shame and horror flickered across her face. She made to flee again. Let's go, Byakko. Byakko turned to John away, readying to leave again. Naruto raised his hand to try and stop them when the pair uncomfortably froze in place like the shinobi before. A shadow was connecting them to Shikamaru, who looked like he was straining to hold them in place, with Shino next to him. She and Byakko struggled to break free and Shikamaru grunted as he struggled to keep them pinned. Let go of us. Shino gave a slight shake of his head and turned to Naruto. You and I both know the part she played in this. Personal feelings aside, she will need to be taken in. I'm sure the Hokage will take the facts into consideration. Karin suddenly looked even more horrified and started shaking as she fought harder. Release me now. Karin, he's right, Naruto said sadly as Kiba approached them. The old man. Not that, she yelled. He's coming, I can feel. Ah. Cursed seal markings branded her skin from foot to head with the indecipherable scripting as she started screaming in agony. Unlike with Sasuke, it didn't seem to empower her or twist her personality. Instead, it caused her pain as they glowed brightly with every movement, and what looked to be dark tendrils of lightning emanated from the marks and wormed their way into her body. Drop it, Shikamaru, Naruto ordered. Now. But Naruto gave him a glare. TCH, whatever. On you if it goes wrong. When he cut his shadow binding, Byakko lowered itself in time as Karin fell off and into Naruto's arm. Her face was twisted in torment, and her muscles were contracting beneath her skin to the extent that he feared they were going to pull themselves apart. Naruto's first reaction was to look for the cursed seal on her neck given what happened to Sasuke, but he didn't find it there. No sooner than she muttered his name did a pair of pained grunt come from behind him. Naruto twisted his head around to find that Shikamaru and Shino were unconscious on the ground. Kabuto was standing behind them, hands aglow with a soft white light. You were in on it all along. Naruto found it hard to believe, even as the more he thought about it the clearer it became. Kabuto was the one who had given them information on the cards, and followed them to the tower. Was that to make sure that they would make it to the finals, so that they would be in a position to be grabbed? You could say that, I suppose. He took a step forward, away from the other two on the ground. Originally, I was supposed to check on Sasuke-kun and act as a spare medic should it be necessary, so that he could progress to the finals. You were an afterthought until Karin-chan asked if she could remain behind, and we figured that we might as well claim the Jinchuriki rather than allow it to be lost with the village. What did you do to my teammate, you bastard? Kiba snarled at the sight of Shino's prone body. Kabuto smiled smugly in response, setting him off. He and Akamaru threw themselves toward Kabuto, spinning once more to tear him apart. Kabuto slammed his hand into the ground and forced earth chakra into it, raising wedges that came up to meet the twin drills at angles. The Inuzuka pair plowed through the first few easily, but the effort slowed their rotations down. He followed up by spitting a stream of dense, almost solidified water that slammed into them like bludgeons. It was strong enough to cancel their technique and sending them spilling violently to the ground. Akamaru's transformation was cancelled as well, leaving the pup unconscious in the mud. Kiba nursed what looked to be a bruised rib from where he was hit as he forced himself back up and then went in for him again. Kabuto nonchalantly backhanded him hard enough to draw blood from his mouth and sent him crashing into a tree, from which he didn't get up again. Kabuto walked past the pair and adjusted his glasses. The light glared off the lenses menacingly as a cruel smile replaced the smug one. Karin-chan, I must say that I'm disappointed in you. To think you would try and betray Orochimaru-sama like this by hiding information and trying to get away. He will be most displeased to learn of this. Karin actually whimpered in fear, only stopped from running due to the seal subjugating her movements. Instead, she seemingly curled in tighter into Naruto, despite the pain that came from moving. It was so simple, he continued. You only had to win his trust. It wouldn't have even been hard. The abandoned boy who longs for companionship, the long-lost family member that greets him, it should have been a cinch to administer the sleeping gas and bring him to us. Now you've forced me to act personally. Byakko, Karin forced out in a tiny, pained voice. Kill him. Byakko lunged in response, and Kabuto moved. The moment Byakko touched the ground where he had been, it swallowed the white tiger in what looked to be quicksand that solidified. Byakko was stuck, its lower body straining to free itself but unable to without enough room to maneuver. That left Naruto as the only one left to deal with the true traitor, a prospect that was looking unlikely. He set Karin down and then made the cross seal to summon up clones when Kabuto closed the distance in a body flicker and then kicked him hard enough in the abdomen that Naruto went sailing backwards, until he slammed into the ground messily and vomited on his hands and knees. Naruto. Karin fought against the seal and the agonizing pain to look up at Naruto as he stood back up. That ended when Kabuto placed the heel of his foot on Karin's head and pushed down, forcing it onto the ground. Then he rolled it so that Naruto could see the expression on her face. "I'll make this easy for you, Naruto-kun." He pushed down with his foot, causing her to scream loudly as he threatened to crush her skull against the ground. "First, you're going to throw your weapons and pouch right towards my feet. Otherwise, I'll crush her head just enough to where she's brain dead, and then kill the rest of your peers." Naruto paused at the thought of being weaponless until Kabuto pushed down harder. Tears of pain were streaming down from Karin's eyes, and the lenses of her glasses were cracking under the pressure. He threw his kunai pouch, shuriken holster, and rear pouch directly at the man's feet underhandedly. "I did what you asked, now let her go." "See, was that so hard?" Kabuto removed his foot from her head, causing her to seemingly squirm pitifully in relief. He took a step forward, pulling out a sealing slip of his own, and threw it towards Naruto, who caught it. "Now, apply this to your forehead. Once you do, both of your chakra sources will be sealed and we'll go. And you'll leave them all unharmed." "If I was going to kill them, I would have done so," Kabuto said. "None of them are even a threat to me. But the longer you hesitate." Naruto looked grimly at the seal while the unfinished threat was left hanging in the air. He wouldn't be able to fight if he did, and he was sure a fate worse than death was awaiting him. But if the others died for him? "Don't." Karin wheezed softly as she grabbed Kabuto's leg. The grip was weak, her arms shaking as the markings glowed from the movement and punished her with pain that she left bottled in her throat. Kabuto shook his head at the attempt. "Really now? This is just pathetic. Karin, ah." His mocking turned into a pained cry as she bit into the back of his leg, just above his combat sandals, and tried to rip it off like a vicious animal. On reflex, Kabuto turned and kicked her away hard, revealing a primed explosive tag on the ground beneath her. She had fought against the immense pain to take it from Naruto's pouch after it landed in front of her, while the other two were in discussion.